Sophie Cunningham back in Indiana. Yesterday we got news Lexi Hull was returning. We already knew Cece was going to be there. The question was, will they be able to get a deal done with Sophie Cunningham? A lot of us hoped we'd get both Lexi and Sophie back, but a lot of us also felt, is that really going to happen?
Clark, a deep
Sophie Cunningham is back with the Indiana Fever, but the wild part is not that she returned. The wild part is that while Fever fans were panicking, refreshing their phones, and wondering whether one of Caitlin Clark's fiercest teammates was about to walk out the door, Indiana was quietly working on something much bigger. They were not just bringing Sophie back. They were trying to figure out whether they could add even more toughness to this roster at the same time. And if that sounds like a small detail, it is not.
Sophie Cunningham has agreed to a one-year deal to return to the Indiana Fever, sources told ESPN. Cunningham joins guards Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull in coming back to the Fever. Indiana has also added newcomers Monique Billings and Ty Harris so far this free agency, okay? So Tres Leches is back in full effect, baby. We back, baby. Let's go. Sophie Cunningham is officially back with the squad. This is something we all wanted and we all expected, okay? But
because what Indiana is doing right now tells you exactly how this franchise sees the future around Caitlin Clark. For a minute there, it looked messy. Free agency opened, and Fever fans were watching the news roll in. Kelsey Mitchell was back. Lexi Hull was back. Monique Billings signed. Tyasha Harris signed. But there was one name everybody was waiting on, and that was Sophie Cunningham.
Sophie Cunningham has agreed to a one-year deal to return to the Indiana Fever. All right, now, I was hoping that she could possibly go for a 2-year deal. I wonder how much money this one-year deal is going to be. As I've been seeing, the one-year deals are a little bit more expensive than the 2-year deals. So what is Sophie being signed for? That's my biggest question, but it is beautiful work to have her back. We know what she was doing last year with the 3-and-D, right? The spark of the team. When the team was stagnant, she come out, talk some trash, get a turnover, run it coast to coast, right?
Then Sophie posted about betting on herself, and that was enough to send the fan base into full panic mode. Suddenly, people were acting like she was gone, like Indiana had lost one of the toughest players on the roster, and like the entire plan around Caitlin Clark was falling apart in real time. But that was not what was happening at all. According to the source material, Sophie's deal was already done before free agency even opened. Indiana was not scrambling. The front office was not caught off guard. They were sitting on the announcement while they worked through a second layer of the plan.
Sophie Cunningham has re-signed with the Indiana Fever on a one-year contract, which, by the way, she did mention in a video from her Show Me Something podcast that her next team ideally would be a multi-year deal. However, she did sign that one-year contract with the Fever, which kind of suggests that she really does want to be with this team. This news is not very surprising to me. I was reading the tea leaves, and there obviously is no way of knowing anything for certain unless you are an insider, and even then, a team might change their mind if something happens and they think that they need to go a different philosophy. A lot of people were thinking possibly Damaris Dantas would not actually get signed because they waited until today, and she is signed, by the way.
They were watching the front court market and trying to see if they could land another physical piece without blowing up the salary structure. That changes the whole story, because now this is not about a delayed signing. This is about a team trying to finish the puzzle before showing everybody what it built. And honestly, that should get Fever fans excited. Because one thing this front office clearly understands is that Caitlin Clark does not just need talent around her. She needs the right kind of talent around her. She needs shooting. She needs energy. She needs people who can run with her. But she also needs teammates who are not going to let teams just rough her up all game without consequences. Caitlin plays at a speed most teams cannot handle. She pulls defenders toward her every possession. She takes contact. She plays through traffic. And when a player like that becomes the center of everything, physical teams are going to test the limits. That means Indiana cannot just be skilled. They have to be ready for a fight too. That is where Sophie Cunningham matters. Yes, she can shoot. And yes, that matters a lot. The source points out that she caught fire from 3 and became one of the hottest shooters in the league over a stretch of the 2025 season. That part is real, but if you think Indiana wanted her back only because of the shooting, you are missing the bigger reason. Sophie brings edge. Sophie brings response. Sophie brings that feeling that if a team is going to get too comfortable pushing Caitlin Clark around, somebody is going to answer. And that is not just emotional, that is strategic. Because when Caitlin knows she has players beside her who will fight back, she can stay aggressive and keep playing her game. That is why Sophie is hard to replace. She is not just an enforcer who gives you a little spacing. And she is not just a shooter who happens to get feisty. She is both at the same time. That is what makes her valuable. Defenses cannot ignore her on the perimeter because she can punish them from 3. But they also know she is not backing down when games get physical. That combination is rare. It gives Indiana more than production. It gives them personality. It gives them attitude. And for a team built around a star who gets targeted as much as Caitlin Clark does, that attitude matters. Now here is where the story gets even more interesting. The delay in Sophie's announcement was tied to Indiana looking at other front court options. The 2 major names in the transcript were Alana Smith and Azura Stevens. Indiana wanted to know whether they could add size, physicality, and front court depth next to Aaliyah Boston. But both of those players got max-level deals elsewhere, and Indiana was not willing to overpay when the value no longer matched the number. The moment those doors closed, the Cunningham announcement came quickly. That is not a front office reacting late. That is a front office staying disciplined. And that discipline matters because the Fever are trying to build something bigger than one season. A lot of people saw Sophie get a 1-year deal and immediately started asking whether she was really happy, especially because she had spoken openly about wanting long-term security. That is a fair question, but the transcript makes it clear this is not just about Sophie. This is how Indiana is managing the expensive part of the roster right now. Kelsey Mitchell's deal is short. The front office is clearly trying to preserve flexibility for what is coming next with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston under the new CBA structure. In other words, this is not a sign that Indiana does not value Sophie. It is a sign that they are trying to keep the window open when the real money starts hitting the books. So no, Sophie did not get pushed aside. If anything, the opposite is true. Indiana wanted her back badly enough to keep her in place while they tested the rest of the market. And Sophie's own reaction after signing did not sound like somebody who felt disrespected. She said she had a feeling it was going to be another special season. She said, "Let's get spicy." That sounds like somebody who knows exactly what this team is building and wants in on it. But there is still one more twist, because Sophie may not be the only enforcer Indiana wants. The transcript points to the front court still being the real unanswered question on this roster. The guard group is deep. Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, and Tyasha Harris give Indiana plenty in the backcourt. But the front court still feels like the place where one more move could change everything. And the name getting the strongest push in the source material is Mayasha Hines-Allen. That is where this gets dangerous for the rest of the league. Because if Sophie gives Indiana a protector on the perimeter, Hines-Allen would give them toughness in the paint. The transcript describes her as physical, hard to scheme around, strong on the glass, and the kind of player who makes life harder before the ball even gets there. She is not just another body. She is the kind of player who changes the feel of a game. And that is important because if Indiana wants to beat bigger teams like New York or a more physical Dallas group, guard play alone is not always going to be enough. At some point, you need force. At some point, you need players who make the other team uncomfortable. And that may be the biggest takeaway from this whole situation. Indiana is not just building around Caitlin Clark's talent. They are building around the reality of what happens when you have Caitlin Clark. More pressure, more attention, more physical defense, more teams trying to knock her out of rhythm, so the Fever are responding the right way. They are adding shooting, they are adding depth, but they are also adding edge. Sophie Cunningham coming back is part of that. And if Indiana adds one more physical frontcourt piece, this team is going to look even more serious than people think. So yes, Sophie Cunningham is back, but this is bigger than one signing. The delay was not dysfunction, it was strategy. The Fever were not just waiting on Sophie. They were testing how far they could push this roster build before showing their hand. And now the message is getting clear. Indiana knows Caitlin Clark needs more than highlights and hype around her. She needs a team that can shoot, a team that can defend, and a team that can make opponents think twice before getting too comfortable. That is why Sophie matters. And that is why the second enforcer question might be the one that defines how dangerous this Fever team becomes. If you're still watching, drop spicy in the comments.